Sampurita pamita paramita balena Vidvansiyo kila kilesa samohajalang teneva landa arahang arahoti namang vandami buddha mamalang hadaye tapetva Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Homage to the exalted one, the worthy one, the supremely enlightened one. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Venerable says, friends in the Dhamma, today in this discussion, we are going to discuss very special topic, the qualities of the Dhamma. Here we hope to discuss the nature of the Dhamma, what the Blessed One realized and proclaimed to the world with great compassion and wisdom. When we see the Buddha's message, it is very clear. Buddha says in short, all his doctrines can be summarized into one sentence. Sajit Pariyodapanam, purifying one's mind. Why do we need to purify our mind? Buddha focuses on his Dhamma for the happiness, spiritual happiness. Our happiness completely depends on purification of our mind. Even though we are well educated, even though we are very rich, if our mind is polluted with negative thoughts, actually everything that we earned is useless. Therefore, happiness is the main purpose of everyone who was born in this world. When we search the Buddha's message, Buddha explained the way how we purify our mind from negative thoughts. Here we should understand the unwholesome mental states, negative thoughts that disturb our peace of mind. There are three unwholesome mental states that disturb our peace of mind. They are lobha or craving, dosa or anger, moha, ignorance or delusion. These are the three unwholesome mental states that disturb our peace of mind. Our real success depends on our happiness. Our happiness depends on purification of our mind from these negative thoughts. When we discuss these three unwholesome mental states, the Buddha explains the nature of these three things. Lobha. Lobha is Danda Viraga Alpasavajya. Danda Viraga means it is difficult to overcome, but results are not more dangerous. Lobha. Dosa means Kippa Viraga Mahasavajya. We can overcome anger not easily or quickly. It is easier than other defilements such as moha. But the results are more dangerous. Mahasavajya, dosa. Moha, the nature of moha is that it is Danda Viraga Mahasavajya. It means it is very difficult to overcome and its results are also more dangerous. This is the nature of these three unwholesome mental roots. When we see the Buddha's message, Buddha explained his message as a gradual path. According to Avijja Sutta, the Buddha says this Dhamma is like the ocean. Ocean deepens gradually from the beach to the deeper water. Like that, his message also has an order, gradual path. It goes to the deeper level little by little. Even a normal person can understand something when he listening to this message carefully and with great intention. And also, Buddha's message is a discovery. It is not a creation. He discovered this message as a person who realized this message first time in this eon. And also, he explained his message in one stanza. All the doctrines that he explained for 45 years can be summarized into one sentence. Sabba papa sakaranang, not to do any evil, kusala supasampada, practicing good, sajita paryodapanam, purifying one's mind, etang buddhana sasanam. This is the message of the Buddha. It is not only message of one Buddha, it is message that all the Buddhas who appear in this world from time to time. And when we see the Buddha's message, we can understand a gradual path. And also Buddha explains some doctrines that help us to succeed in this life and hereafter, and how to attain the deliverance directly. One day, a Gahapati named Vyagapajja came to the Buddha and asked, Bhante, please explain some doctrines for me that helps me to succeed in this immediate life. Then Buddha explains some doctrines such as Utthana Sampada, energy, Araka Sampada, protection, Kalyana Mittata, good friendship, Samajivekata, balanced livelihood. These things are explained by the Blessed One that help us to succeed in this immediate life. And sometimes Buddha explains some doctrines that help us to succeed our next life, how we make a blissful life hereafter. For that, we have to practice 3 meritorious deeds. Dhanancha, samacharyancha, metta, chittancha, bhave. With the understanding of the karmic law, if we practice 3 meritorious deeds, dana, generosity, sila, virtue or moral conduct, bhavana, meditation, especially metta bhavana, loving kindness meditation. As the result of this path, we are confident that we never fall into a hell. As the followers of the Buddha, we should be confident in that we never fall into a hell. For that, always we should practice generosity, follow the 5 precepts, and metta bhavana. These things are very important. With the understanding of the karmic law, here we understand that whatever we do with intention, physically, verbally, and mentally, we will have the same results according to our mental condition. That is why Dhammapada explains, Mano Pubbangama Dhamma, Mano Setta Manomaya. Mind is the forerunner, mind is chief, mind made dade. If someone does something with a wicked mind, he will have negative results. If a person does something with a pure mind, physically, verbally, or mentally, he will have fruitful results because of his pure mind. Actually, this is Buddhist psychology. Mano Pubbangama Dhamma, Bauddha Manovidyava, Buddhist psychology. This is the thing that Buddha explained to succeed our this life and also hereafter. And the very special explanation of the Buddha is that the way how we achieve the real liberation, deliverance, or freedom. How we eradicate our defilements completely from our mind. For that, Buddha has explained a very special topic. What is that? Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the main teaching in Buddhism. Buddha says very clearly, in the past and the present, I explain only two things to the world, the suffering and the cessation of suffering. And when we listen in a message of the Buddha, when we listen to a sermon of a person, when we read something in Buddhism, we should know that whether this article or sermon explains the doctrines that helps us to succeed this life or next life, or that helps us to directly to overcome the samsaric circle. That is very important. When we listen to a Dhamma sermon, we should know that whether this person explains the doctrines that helps us to succeed this life or completely eradicate our ignorance. That is very important. When someone explains the Four Noble Truths, it means it directly focuses on how to overcome ignorance completely. And also, when we listening to Four Noble Truths, when we refer some discourses, sometimes Buddha has explained Four Noble Truths. When we see some teachings and stanzas such as Dukkhang Dukkha Samuppadam, Dukkassa Chatikkamam, Aryan Chattangikang Maggang, Dukkupa Samagaminam. How many truths are explained here? Dukkhang Dukkha Samuppadam, Dukkassa Chatikkamam, Aryan Chattangikang Maggang, Dukkupa Samagaminam. We can see here Four Noble Truths. This is the place where we should be wise. We should be skillful. As soon as we listen in a sermon, we should know that how many truths are here. And again I can say that Sile patittahaya naro sapanyo chittam panyancha bhavyang. What is the truth here?
Last one.
Yes, very good. Magga Satya is Sila Samadhi Panya. Here it is only one truth. And in another way, Buddha says, I explain only two things. Dukkhancha, Dukkha Nirodhancha. How many truths here? There are two truths here. Suffering and the cessation of suffering. Dukkha Satya and Nirodha Satya. Sometimes Buddha says, Abhinyayang abhinyatam bhave tabbancha bhavitam pahatabbam pahinam me tasma buddhoti uchati. Abhinyayang abhinyatam. What is the truth here? What is abhinyaya?
Suffering.
Abhinyaya?
First one.
First one, very good. Dukkha satyam parinyayam. That is first truth. Bhave tabbancha bhavitam. Which should be practiced, I practice it. What is the truth? What is the truth there? Magga Satya. And pahatabbam pahinanme. What is the truth there? What should be overcome? What should be eradicated? Samudaya Satya. Dukkha Satyang parinyayang. The noble truth of suffering should be understood. Samudaya Satyang pahatabbang. The noble truth of the origin of suffering should be overcome. and Nirodha Satyam Satyakatabbam. The noble truth of the cessation of suffering should be realized, should be experienced. And Magga Satyam Bhavetabbam. The noble truth of the path that leads to getting rid of suffering should be developed.
So what should be overcome is not the suffering, right? What should be overcome is the cause of the suffering, craving.
Yes. And very special thing, there is a very special discourse named Gavampati. It says, if someone can understand one truth, it means he can understand other truths too. But we should understand this truth according to what the Buddha taught. If not, we can't understand. Here, it is very important to understand what the noble truth of suffering. Here, very special thing. There is a difference between suffering and the noble truth of suffering. Dukkha and dukkha satya. And origin and the noble truth of the origin of suffering. Samudaya and samudaya satya. Cessation and the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. Nirodha and nirodha satya. Magga and magga satya. The path and the noble truth of the path that leads to getting rid of suffering. There are some differences we can see here. Dukkha and dukkha satya. There is a difference here. Dukkha can be understood by anyone in this world. Jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, separation is suffering. These are the sufferings that anyone can understand in this world. Even the Buddha, before he did his renunciation, he had understood this suffering. He had seen very old persons. He had seen dead persons. He had seen sick persons. But after he attained enlightenment, he says very clearly, Pobbe ananusotesu dhammesu chakko mudapadi. I realized something when I attained enlightenment that I never had before. Buddha says, I realized some special thing when I attained enlightenment that I had never heard. It is not same the normal suffering such as aging, death, sickness. But when Buddha delivered his first sermon in the Migadaya, Buddha says, the dukkha satya, kataman chauso dukkhang arya satyam, jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, so on. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, death is suffering, so on. He has explained. Finally, he says, Sankittena panchupadana khanda dukkha. In short, the clinging to five aggregates is suffering. This is actually suffering. But there is another thing that we can see when we refer some teachings in Buddhism. We can see very special explanation about the Four Noble Truths in Abhidhamma Pitaka, Yamaka Pakarana, in Satya Yamaka. There we can see the difference between dukkha and dukkha satya. There it explains what is the dukkha and dukkha satya. Kāyikan dukkhaṃ cetasika dukkhaṃ tapetva avasesaṃ dukkha satyaṃ na dukkhaṃ. If there anything besides physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering, that is not suffering. This is very important thing. If there anything except physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering. That is not suffering. And again Buddha says, Kaikam dukkam, cetasika dukkam, dukkancha, dukkha sacchancha. Physical suffering and mental suffering is the noble truth of suffering and suffering as well. This is the place where should be skillful. This is the place where we should be wise. This is the place where we can see which is very rare. Kaikam dukkam cetasika dukkam tapetva. It means besides physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering. It means our very first experience. When we see something, when we hear something, when we smell something, when we touch something, very first experience is very instant. In that first experience, 5 aggregates arise at the moment. That is very pure. Their consciousness, vijnana, is pure. That is why it says, pavassaramidam bhikkhave chittam. The consciousness here is very pure. It is away from attachment or craving. There it says, that is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. That is just a vipaka or result. The very first 5 aggregates are pure. That is neither wholesome nor unwholesome. That is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. That is just a vipaka, that is neutral. But it is very instant. Then we come to the next level, which is that where we understand it. When we understand this experience, we recognize everything through our mind consciousness. Sometimes you may think that we recognize something through eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness. Actually, we can see something through our eye consciousness, but we can't recognize something through eye consciousness. According to Jnana Vibhanga in Vibhanga Pakarana, it says very clearly, Na panchahi vijnanehi kinchi dhammang pativijanati anyatra abhinipata matta. We are unable to recognize something completely through 5 consciousnesses such as eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, so on. Sabbe Dhamma mano vijnana dhatuya vinyeya. Everything is realized by mind consciousness. We can see through our eye consciousness, but when we recognize it, the first experience has ceased. We recognize everything through our mind consciousness. The very first experience is pure. That is the noble truth of suffering. That is the thing that Buddha realized when he attained enlightenment. But the other thing is, Buddha says very clearly, Kaikam dukkam cetasika dukkam dukkancha dukkha sacchancha. If there are any physical suffering and mental suffering, that is the noble truth of suffering and suffering as well. Why is that? When we recognize something, it depends on the very first experience, which is very pure, the 5 aggregates result. Except these 5 aggregates, we can recognize in the present moment. We recognize everything comparing the previous experience. Therefore, here our 5 aggregates, the clinging to 5 aggregates which consist with ignorance, is depend on the very first experience. But very first experience is very pure. In this situation, we can understand if Buddha explains something to realize, that is very first experience. Sometimes Buddha says, Rupam bhikkhave parinyayam. Form should be understood. What is that? Rupam bhikkhave parinyayam. The very first experience Rupa should be understood. We should not overcome it. We can't overcome the first experience. Even Arhantas face this experience. Buddha never advised us to overcome the very first experience. But in Buddha's time, there were some ascetic people. They advised their students to overcome the very first experience. How did they do it? They advised their students such as, Avijja Sutta, Parasarya Brahmana. He advised his students for renunciation, close your eyes, close your ears, don't look at pictures. This is the way how to liberate. Did Buddha accept it? No, Buddha didn't accept it. Buddha rejected it. We should never overcome the first experience. First experience should be understood. And sometimes Buddha says, Rupam bhikkhave pahatabam. Form should be overcome. What is that form, that rupa? That rupa means that we have taken with our ignorance. After that first experience is, we take that rupa such as this present rupa. This rupa that we have taken through our ignorance. For example, when we eat something, we keep something in our plates. We are eating. When we are eating, when we are tasting, we think that the food that I am tasting is in the plate. Is it true? It is not true. At this moment, if you taste something, that food is in your mouth, not in your plate. But we never thought it. Our entire experience also like that. This rupa is like the plate. It means when we recognize this plate, this form, actually the first experience has ceased. When we drive, we always look at front. Do you drive looking at your wheels? Never. We always look at front, but we are in back on the wheels. But we never look at the wheels. We always look at front. But we are living in the past experience. Our whole life also like that. When we look at the plate, if we think now I am tasting some food is in the plate, is it true? This is only an example actually. However, our entire life is like that. This is the nature of the ignorance. When we see something, when we hear something, when we smell something, when we taste something, we can contact something, we can contact the forms, rupa, but the very important thing, when we recognize it, the very first experience has already ceased. If we see this reality, actually, this is the place where we should be confident in what the Buddha taught. Have any question?
Yeah. So Bhante, you said, the most of time in the Four Noble Truths, the suffering explained as birth, decay, getting sick, and all physical and mental suffering, sorrow, lamentation, and despair, displeasure. So then, how could be accept this physical and mental suffering and truth be something else?
Yes, actually, very good question. Even we refer Dhamma Sutta. There Buddha says, Katamancha also dukkhaṃ arya saccam, jātipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, so on. You are so correct. Actually, we have to refer some doctrines in Buddhism. Before Buddha attained enlightenment, when he was going to the park with Channa. He saw everything. He saw the person who was dead, who was sick, who was in old age. After he attained enlightenment, he says very clearly, I realized something that I had never heard. This is the thing that he understood. Actually, when Buddha explained his message to ascetic persons, they were so gifted. When he explained his message in short, because of their gifted mind, they could realize it very soon. And also the important thing, discourses we can see a very few things. Buddha explained Dhamma Sutta more than 3 days.
I think the Aryaparayana Sutta explaining the most of in the Dhammacakka Sutta's teaching to the five cities. The same thing about the birth, aging, death, and
Yes,
last
many
one,
places.
I think the real essence is the last one, the Panchupada Nakkhana. That's the special suffering.
yeah, that's right.
Actually, that also belongs to the suffering. That arises after our first experience. That is why we need to refer other sources, not only Aryaparayana Sutta, even we refer the Vinaya Pitaka, Mahavaggapaliya. Mahavaggapali also explains more details about Dhammacakka Sutta, how other ascetic people, they attain extreme entry, so on. However, we have to refer some doctrines in Buddhism if we need to go to this real message. Especially Abhidhamma Pitaka, we have to refer it. And also the second thing is that we can trust it. Even though we see a sick person, even though we see a person who is born, even though we see a dead body, can we see the quality of the Dhamma which is Sanditiko Akalika? Actually, if we have developed our confidence or saddha, immediately our inner courage, motivation should increase to the maximum level. But when we see this message, according to Yamaka Satya, it is very clear. It explains the normal suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well. And we can understand it. Again and again we refer these sources. It is clear that what the Buddha explained. Now we are going to the next level, the suffering. Suffering is suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well. That is the very special thing. So, Vadhandro, dukkha or suffering, common suffering is suffering and the noble truth of suffering as well. Why is that? That suffering arises based on the noble truth of suffering. Besides the noble truth of suffering, we have no second experience. We always create suffering based on the very first experience. The very first suffering should not be overcome. Even Arantas have this very first experience. He has Khanda Upadi. That is why after he attained enlightenment, we say that Sopadisesa Nibbana. Sopadisesa means the Nibbana with Upadi. What Upadi? Khanda Upadi. He has eradicated Klesa Upadi, Abhisankara Upadi. They have eradicated, but still they have Khanda Upadi. Khanda means the very first pure five aggregates. Still they have that truth. The first noble truth should not be overcome. That should be realized. Then that is very important. Here, dukkha satya cannot be translated to any language. Why is that? As soon as we see dukkha, we say that suffering or unsatisfactoriness or some words. Those words cannot be used to this special word. It is unique in Buddhism. Dukkha satya, the noble truth of suffering that is neither wholesome nor unwholesome, that is neutral, that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Then dukkha, jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, vyadipi dukkha, that is dukkhancha, dukkha satyancha. Kāyikān dukkhaṃ, cetasika dukkhaṃ, dukkhaṃca, dukkha satyanca. Why is that? That dukkha can be realized by anyone in the ordinary level. And also that dukkha or suffering based on the very first experience, which is the noble truth of suffering. And when we see some five aggregates in discourses, sometimes Buddha says, this thing should be understood, this thing should be experienced, this thing should be understood, this thing should be overcome. For example, sometimes Buddha says, Rupam bhikkhave pariññayam, as I mentioned earlier, form should be understood. That is very first experience. Again, sometimes Buddha says, Rupam bhikkhave pahatabbam. What is that? That is the rupa or form that we have taken with our ignorance, like in this moment. That form should be overcome, that we have taken through our ignorance. Vijnana or chitta and sankhara also like that. Sometimes Buddha says, Pavassaramidam bhikkhave chittam, consciousness of mind is very pure. Sometimes Buddha says, Vijnanam, mayupamancha vijnanam. Consciousness is like a mirage. Sometimes Buddha says, Chittang Panyancha Bhavayam. Consciousness and wisdom should be developed. Vijnana is pure is in the very first experience, dukkha satya. Vijnana, which is mirage, is the samudaya satya. Vijnana with wisdom should be developed is in the magga satya. Vijnana with wisdom who have eradicated defilements completely is in the nirodha satya. Even arahantas have vijnana. That is why Dhamma Dinna says vijnana or consciousness and wisdom cannot be separated. Wherever wisdom, vijnana also there. But wherever vijnana, sometimes we can see wisdom.
This means the vijnana can be separated from craving, but not the wisdom.
Wherever we have craving, consciousness also there, vijnana also there.
But not
That is
craving
consist with ignorance. That should be overcome. That is mirage. That consciousness should be overcome. But we can see sometimes Buddha says, Chittang Panyancha Bhavayam. Consciousness and wisdom should be developed. That vijnana consists with panya or wisdom. That should be developed. That belongs to magga satya. Magga satyam bhavetabhang. The noble truth, the path that leads to getting rid of suffering should be developed. Magga satyam bhavetabhang. And even sankhara, sanya, perception. Marichupama sanya. Sanya is like a mirage. Sanya should be overcome in the samudaya satya or the noble truth of the origin of suffering. But you know, in Dasa Sanya, Girimanada Sutta, Buddha says Sanya should be developed. What is that Sanya? Those Sanyas are the positive thoughts which consist with Panya. Anicca Sanya, Anatta Sanya, Asubha Sanya, impermanence, selflessness, Anapanasati Bhavana, those are the perceptions that should be developed with consist with wisdom. That is the place where we can see Magga Satya or the path of purification. We will discuss Chaturara Satya in another day. Here I want to explain it in short, okay? Again and again we will talk later. Today that is not our main topic.
Bhavana, may I ask a question? So you said the first point should be Rupam Parinyaya. It should be understood, not overcome. So I'm confused about that. According to some teachings, the Buddha's teaching, whatever we experience by our senses, so then we have to overcome at the first point.
In the first experience, we are unable to overcome it. Even Arahants cannot overcome it in the first experience. In the first experience, we have received these things as the result of our previous good karmas. Eye, forms, ear, sounds, nose, smell, our tongue, foods, and our physical body forms. These are the results of our previous actions. We receive these things as the result of our previous good karmas. We should not overcome them. Even Arahants can do it. But after it finishes, if we can reflect on it with our wisdom, then our mind is not fixed in the material world. That is why, according to Madhupindika Sutta, you can refer the very first experience. It says, Chakkuncha paticca rupecha uppajjati chakku vijnanam. That is the way how suffering arises. If we take I forms in the present moment, it means we are in the samsaric circle. Our life ends with suffering, aging, decay, and lamentation. The next step is says, Chakkusming asati, Rupasming asati, Chakku vijnanasming asati. Then he doesn't have papancha. It means he doesn't take any form in the present moment. That he knows very well form has ceased already. If we take that, sometimes some people, when they see that Chakkung asat, it means whether he is blind. Actually, he is not blind. He can see forms, but as soon as he sees the forms, he realizes that the form is not at this moment. Like the plate that we look at. We are tasting here, but we can see the plate. The plate food is not now food in our mind. Our mouth has another food that we have seen earlier. Okay, we will discuss again. That is, it is actually, that should be confused. It is true. That is why Buddha says, Pubbya anunusutesu dhammesu. And also, Patisotagaming nipunang duddha sanganu. It is very difficult to understand, and this is against the stream. This is not the regular thing what the normal people understand. This is the discovery that Buddha did. Yes, Bhante?
Yes, Bhante, as I can process this, what you just explained, I think to simplify that, as I have seen and the way I have tried to understand, this is the experience of these two realities, I think. What we identify as the objective reality and the subjective reality, right?
Yes.
In internal and external. According to your explanation, I think when it comes to our personal experience, right, which we experience in our mind or the consciousness, you said, when it comes to that level, the objective reality is already gone, or it is not something you experience externally. It is something that you experience in your brain, as it explains today, right? Eventually, that's what we say, what you experience in your system, within your body and mind, eventually, it is to be an illusion, which is created in your brain or the consciousness, mind, which is not the truth.
So we attach to something that is not really existing right now.
Yes, we cannot.
Something that is past today.
Yeah, and Bhante mentioned that you should not overcome the first experience means with an open eye, you cannot stop seeing, right?
Yes. But in sila level, we have some controls, but we can't stop it.
You cannot stop, you cannot control that.
We should not do it.
Right.
But in the, Tadanga Pahana, we have some controls by practicing sila.
That happens even, I mean,
Very simple.
Towards the
Simple.
damage
Damage, the
process,
control the damage, right? Damage control. No, not the real solution.
Yes, actually we have a gradual path. Directly we are unable to recognize this reality. That is why Buddha has explained a gradual path, Sila, Samadhi and Panya. In the Sila level we have some controls. By practicing 5 precepts, we have some controls as Tadanga Pahana. And Jhana level,
right.
in the Jhana level we control 5 hindrances.
Even I think with the sila level, the control of the discipline comes with our reaction level, I think. To what we
Yes.
experience or what we feel.
We don't react through our words and physical body, but mentally still we have problem. That is why we need another step to Sila and Samadhi.
Right.
Samadhi and Panya.
Yeah, as you mentioned that the gradual process earlier, right? In terms of the noble truth of suffering, as you explained this complex idea about suffering and the noble truth of suffering, would it be okay to understand these different levels of understanding suffering as a gradual process, right? Like how would one normal person, ordinary person or practitioner would understand noble truth of suffering, right, in the beginning?
Actually, first of all, we should have the Sutame Jnana,
Right.
the knowledge of hearing. That is very important. That is why Buddha says very clearly,
That is in the superficial level, right? Before
Yes.
we go into kind
yes,
of level.
that is why Buddha says, Janato ham bhikkhave passato asvanam khayam vadami.
Knowing the map before we travel.
Yes, before we go to a trip, first of all, we should know the address. Without knowing the destination, if we drive, our effort is useless. Therefore, Buddha always emphasizes the importance of knowing this path before we start our practice. Buddha says, I proclaim the liberation for those who know the path, who see the path. That is the Sutame Jnana, the knowledge of hearing.
Yes, so know means sutame, but seeing means personal experiencing it. Like.
Yes, by Samatha and Vipassana meditation. First, Sutame Jnana, the knowledge of hearing, then the knowledge of contemplating, and the knowledge of meditation, Samatha and Vipassana. These 3 steps should be practiced little by little. That is the gradual path in Buddhism. Okay, we are discussing the main topic, qualities of the Dhamma. And Four Noble Truths will be discussed in another day. But during this session, we usually discuss Four Noble Truths. The reason is that this is the main topic in Buddhism. This is the heart of Buddhism. This is the place where that decides our spiritual path. And again, they are said, Samudaya and Samudaya Satya, Nirodha and Nirodha Satya, Magga and Magga Satya too. we have to discuss another 3 levels. Dukkha and Dukkha Satya, Samudaya and Samudaya Satya, Nirodha and Nirodha Satya, Magga and Magga Satya too. Little by little, next days we will discuss. Here we are discussing especially, you have received another article in your WhatsApp group. You can see another article about this topic, the gradual path. There I have discussed Avijja Sutta. Avijja Sutta is a very good example about the gradual path in Buddhism. There are 10 steps, stages that we can see the path. The final goal or final destination of our practice is that Vijja Vimukti. Vijja means knowledge or wisdom. Vimukti means liberation or emancipation, deliverance. For knowledge and deliverance, we should practice 7 enlightenment factors. 7 enlightenment factors. Sati Sambojjhanga, the enlightenment factor of consciousness. Dhamma Vijaya Sambojjhanga, keen investigation. Viriya, energy. Piti, rapture, so on. There are 7 enlightenment factors we should practice to come Vijja, Vimukti, knowledge and liberation. If we want to achieve 7 enlightenment factors, we should practice 4-fold mindfulnesses. Mindfulness is the based on the 7 enlightenment factors. If we want to practice 4-fold mindfulnesses, we should practice Trivida Sucharita, 3 disciplines. Kaya Sucharita, discipline in our behavior or body, discipline in our speech, Vachi Sucharita, Mano Sucharita, discipline in our mind. Trivida Sucharita based on practicing 4-fold mindfulnesses. If we want to practice 3 disciplines, we should have Indriya Samvara. Indriya Samvara means discipline in senses. Without discipline in senses, we are unable to control our 3 doors. For Indriya Samvara, discipline in senses, we have to practice Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness and wise comprehension. For Sati Sampajanya, we should have Yoniso Manasikara, wise consideration. For wise consideration or Yoniso Manasikara, we should be confident in what the Buddha taught. This is the place, the Four Noble Truths, where we should be confident in. Saddha. Saddha is very important. Saddhati Tathagatasya bodhing. Confidence is that be confident in what the Buddha realized. Buddha realized the Four Noble Truths. And for Saddha or confidence, we should listen to Dhamma. Without listening to Dhamma, we are unable to gain confidence in what the Buddha taught. For Dhamma, what should we have? Good association, Kalyana Mitra. Kalyana Mitra or having good friendship is like a rain which falls on the top of the mountain. When it falls, then everywhere we can be fertilized. The very first experience is that Kalyana Mitra who explains the Buddha's message. Then we listening to Dhamma. Listening to Dhamma is the second thing. The third one, confidence or Saddha. then Yoniso Manasikara, Sati Sampajanya, Indriya Sangvara, discipline in senses, and Trividha Sucharita, 3 disciplines, then 4 Noble Truths, 7 Enlightenment Factors, finally Vijja Vimukti, knowledge and liberation. This is the gradual path with details. Sometimes Buddha has explained it as the Noble Eightfold Path with 8 factors. Sometimes Buddha explained this path as the 7 enlightenment factors. Sometimes Buddha has explained this path as the skillfulness in senses. Sometimes Buddha explained this path as the 5 spiritual faculties. Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. Sometimes Buddha explained this path as the 4-fold mindfulnesses. Sometimes Buddha explained this path as the 3 disciplines, Sila, Samadhi and Panya. Sometimes, according to Avijja Sutta, the Buddha says you have to practice only 2 things, what they are, concentration and wisdom, samatha and vipassana. Sometimes Buddha says you have to practice only 1 thing, Yoniso Manasikara or Panya, wisdom. When the wisdom is developed, other Sobhana Chaitasika, beautiful mental factors gradually increase. I have given the list of beautiful thoughts that we can practice in the last page, page number 8. You can see these mental formations. How do we practice wisdom? Reflecting on impermanence. Our I is impermanent. I arises and ceases at the moment. Forms outside world, they arise and cease at the moment. They immediately cease. I consciousness arises and ceases. With the confidence in the Four Noble Truths explained by the Buddha, if we practice this especially Vipassana Bhavana, wisdom, it means these positive mental formations, beautiful mental factors gradually increase. What they are? Saddha, confidence; Sati, mindfulness; Hiri, moral shame; Ottappa, moral dread; and Alobha, non-attachment; Adosa, loving kindness. So on, these are the positive thoughts in our mind and mental formations. We can see these positive thoughts gradually develop when we are practicing insight meditation. And also, we have summarized the main doctrines in Buddhism from page number 5, the fundamental teachings in Buddhism. Page number 5, the triple gem. We have received very precious triple gem, the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. These 3 things linked with Dhamma. We trust in the Buddha, it means Buddha's enlightenment, his Dhamma. Dhamma also Dhamma. And Sangha, who is the Sangha? Sangha means who practice Dhamma. Therefore, Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha linked with the Dhamma. And when we meet this triple gem, we follow the 5 precepts, Panchasila, abstaining from stealing and so on. When we see the Buddha's message, Buddha explains some doctrines that helps us to succeed in this immediate life. There are 5 things we can see: education, economy, health, morality, and good friendship. These are helpful to succeed in this immediate life. In many discourses, we can see these things. And also, second level, how we receive a blissful life, not to fall hell anywhere, anytime. For that, we have to practice 3 meritorious deeds with the understanding of the karmic law. And third level, with the understanding of the dependent origination or the Four Noble Truths, we have to practice 3 trainings, 3 disciplines, Sila, Samadhi and Panya. Buddhist vision, right vision, can be divided into 2. One of them is that understanding the karmic law. The second one is understanding the dependent origination. Iti imasmin satidang hoti, when this arises, when this is not, this is not. This is the theory of causality. Dependent origination, paticcasamuppada. The mission in Buddhism. Mission means what we should do. Doing good deeds, merits, generosity, virtue, meditation, and practicing 3 disciplines. This is the Buddhist mission, the heavenly path and deliverance path. For the deliverance path, for the heavenly path, we have to practice 3 meritorious deeds. For the deliverance path, we have to practice 3 disciplines. The ultimate goal of life, ultimate goal is the asankata or everlasting happiness, eradicating completely greed, anger and delusion, ragakaya, dosakaya, mohakaya. And the best friend. Who is our best friend? Our best friend is not outside, he is within us, which is mindfulness. Being aware of our body and mind. Buddha always advises us to make a refuge within us. How do we make a refuge within us? Living mindfully. Living with mindfulness. Being aware of our body and mind. When we see something, if our mind is fixed outside, it means we are not mindful. As soon as we see something, we hear something, if we are mindful that this form has already ceased, I see this thing through my mind consciousness, it means we are away from the material world. It means we are not controlled by the material world. It means outside world is unable to bring us suffering or even happiness. We have created happiness within us by ourselves. And the fourfold mindfulness, already you know it, Kayanupassana zone, 5 spiritual faculties, Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. And the highest knowledge that a person can gain for getting rid of suffering in the worldly level, Lokiya level, we have knowledge about the karmic law. The second level, we have knowledge about the dependent origination. And here, it is very important to understand when we see some teachings of the Buddha, sometimes Buddha has focused on success of our sansaric journey. For example, sometimes Buddha says, Kammasakomhi kammadayado kammayoni. Please reflect on that. Your relative is your karma. That is your heritage. Buddha says, karma is coming, karma is following you. That is explained according to the conventional truth in the worldly level. But when we go to the other level, the deliverance path, what Buddha said, Kammasakara konatti vipakassaka vedako suddha dhamma pavattanti. Kammasakara konatti, there is no person who does the karma. There is no person who receives the karma. There Buddha explained it according to the ultimate truth. We should not be confused in this teaching because we should understand what is the level that Buddha has explained these teachings. Again, sometimes Buddha says, Gabba meke uppajjanti niriyam papa kamino saggan sugatino yanti parinibbanti anasava. Some persons come back to the womb of the mom. Some people will be reborn in the heavenly realm. Arhantas will pass away like a lamp. That is the explanation according to the conventional truth. But sometimes some people come to the Buddha and ask, Bhante, is there a life after that? Buddha was silent. There Buddha was silent according to the ultimate truth. When we discuss something according to the conventional truth, we can say there is a person who is going here and there from birth to birth. It is explained according to the conventional truth in the worldly condition. But when we go to the ultimate truth, we can say a person who is going from birth to birth. Buddha says very clearly, this present thought doesn't go to the next thought. In this situation, how do I say that after death a person will go to a next birth? That is explained according to the ultimate truth. This is the skill that we should develop throughout listening to Dhamma. In one thing,
Venerable, you mean that there is a contradiction between conventional and the reality, absolute truth?
yes. If not, we are confused. When we listen to a sermon or when we read some discourse, we should know that whether this is explained the conventional truth or ultimate truth. If not, we may be confused. And if not, sometimes we may have some wrong views. Then Dhamma reflection and Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Heart of Buddhism, Dependent Origination, Five Aggregates. Five Aggregates is our heritage. It is explained in various levels. Vijnana also like that. Vijnana can be seen in Vipaka level and Karma level and Vidarsana level and also Arhantas level. If a person asks what is Vijnana, we can give a very particular explanation. It is like a Vibhajyavadi Vyakarana. Sankhara also like that. If a person asks, Bhante, what is Sankhara? Or perception, Sanya, we can tell a very one particular explanation. It is a Vibhajyavadi, or we should explain it with details.
According to the context.
Yes, according to context. That is very important. And causes to develop, the other thing is how to investigate these five aggregates. Samudaya, Attangama, Asada, Adinava, Nissarana. Arising, ceasing, gratification, danger and letting go. Causes to develop wisdom. According to Avijja Sutta, Buddha explains there are four factors that help us to develop our wisdom. Associating good friends, listening to Dhamma, wise reflection, and practice. These are the things that help us to develop our wisdom. Okay, finally, the three characteristics: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, selflessness. And the steps of the purification or deliverance according to Avijja Sutta, there are 10 steps that we can see here. With details, you can see it in the other handout. And finally, we have to practice only one thing, which is wisdom, panya, reflecting on impermanence. Every moment, our entire life is that arising and ceasing of our five aggregates: rupa, form, vedana, feeling, sanya, perception, sankhara, mental formations, and vijnana, consciousness. These five things every moment arise and cease, arise, cease. Arising and ceasing. If we have this understanding, we find the path, very fearless path, direct path, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. Right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Buddhism has a vision. Vision means understanding the Four Noble Truths. And mission. What is the mission? These are the qualities that we should practice, such as the Noble Eightfold Path. And also the very special thing, as I mentioned yesterday, Buddhism explained the result too. Satya jnana, kiccha jnana, kata jnana. Kata means result. Vimuttasming vimuttimici jnanan hoti. After we liberate from suffering, we know that I have liberated from these negative thoughts from our mind. That is also very important. We always know the condition that we are in at this moment. If we have overcome 5 hindrances in the Viskambana Prahana, we know it. If we have eradicated some Sanyojana in the Samuchcheda level, we know it. If we have eradicated the defilements completely, that also we know it. And finally, we have inner courage to practice this path because Dhamma is well expounded. Dharma is well explained by the Blessed One. Adi Kalyanam, Madhya Kalyanam, Pariyosane Kalyanam. The Dhamma, which is excellent in the beginning, excellent in the middle, excellent in the end. What is the beginning? Beginning is Sila. When we practice Sila discipline in our speech and behavior, we are very calm. And also when we practice Samadhi, the middle, we reduce 5 hindrances. And when we practice Panya, the end, we are so happy because the negative thoughts, unwholesome mental states don't disturb our peace of mind. Okay, now our time is finished. We have another time for the discussion. We will meet again for the discussion. In the discussion, our Bhantes also can present your thoughts and suggestions. That is very worthy. I really appreciate your suggestions and your thoughts too. Then we can share our knowledge. Okay, thank you for your good attention and listening to Dhamma. By the power of this spiritual energy, by listening to Dhamma, we acquired a lot of positive energy. By the power of this spirituality, may all of us attain the final bliss of liberation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dukkham pantaca nirdukkha, bhayam pantaca nirbhayam, sokam pantaca nissokha, hontu sambe pipanino.